Hey guys, how's it going? Welcome to the very first episode of my podcast. I'm so excited to be getting this project started up. So to start with, my name is Saki. I'm going to explain a little bit about what this podcast is for, as well as some of the reasons I have for getting it started up. So this podcast is for mostly everyone, but it's going to be geared towards people who wish to learn Australian English just by covering random topics that Australians generally like to talk about. You might gain some insight into Australian culture, Australian values, and if you're planning to live in the country one day, you might find this podcast helpful. I'm also doing it to help myself get into the habit of using my voice a little bit more, and I have my own reasons for doing that, which I will get into. So I'll just be covering random topics. I'm going to be speaking quite casually. It's a little bit of a language learning / casual conversation type of podcast. And the idea is you get a feel of how Australian people generally talk. And I'm going to have subtitles as well to help you guys out. So a little bit of a background on myself. I'm from a seaside town in Australia. I've lived here most of my life. I've had some experiences traveling as well as living abroad. I lived in Greece and the UK. I've recently been to Japan. I absolutely loved it. I've been learning Japanese as well, which I will get into sometimes on this podcast. I also grew up with specific social challenges. I was mute for a large portion of my school life, and by mute I mean this with no exaggeration whatsoever. I literally did not talk at all for about 10 years. So I set out on a journey, quite literally, and experienced living in different countries to help myself break out of my comfort zone and try to build up my confidence and social skills that I missed out on because I didn't get to build them in school. So podcasts have actually helped me in my life. So I decided I wanted to create a podcast myself to help give back to that sort of podcast community. I've been learning Japanese through Japanese podcasts, so I want to help teach people English doing the same thing. So you could say I was inspired to create a podcast. So that's what I'm doing now. I'm 35 years old now. I'm currently a university student. I'm studying aviation with the intention of becoming a pilot one day, dream job, hopefully. I also have a lot of ambitions, hopes and dreams, just like everyone else. And I have lots of hobbies. There are a lot of things I would like to achieve in my life, and dividing my time between hobbies is something that I'm really passionate about as well, because I want to enjoy my life as much as possible. And creating this podcast is one of those things that has honestly always been on my mind, but I've never gotten around to doing. And like I said, I was inspired to create one. So because I feel inspired by what a lot of content creators out there do, I decided to finally give it a go and make something that is geared towards language learning. I'm mostly going to be talking solo, but every once in a while I might have a guest on. This podcast is new, it's in its infancy, and I'm going to aim to keep each episode around 10 minutes in length. I don't want to go too crazy, and just cover various topics. So today's topic, I'm going to talk about living with anxiety and what it was like to grow up having said anxiety, as well as how I deal with stress, particularly in the workplace. So as I touched on earlier, I grew up with poor social skills. My teenage years were the worst. You could say I had severe anxiety, very low self-esteem, low confidence. These are issues that are relatable to a lot of people, and over time I've mitigated these issues for myself, but I understand that many people continue to have these kinds of issues even after their teenage years and into their adult lives. So I still experience bad days from time to time. I get it. But as you get older, it's important to learn how to make peace with your anxieties. Now, anxiety is something everyone experiences. It's a natural human experience. Some people are better at dealing with it than others. Some are better at hiding it. I certainly wasn't. Definitely not in my younger years. And I have friends who struggle with anxiety as well. We all experience it for a reason. I understand why it's there, for evolutionary reasons. I can get stressed out and anxious quite easily. I work in hospitality, and any hospitality job can feel overwhelming at times with the amount of workload, the attention you must divide between tasks, and so on. Stress can do one of two things. It can force you to focus and accomplish your task, or it can cause you to have a meltdown. And I 100% used to have meltdowns in the past, even in hospo jobs. It can happen to anyone, but I've learned how to manage that over time. This might be a good time to mention as well, I'm on the autism spectrum, and that definitely plays a role in my ability to handle stress. I consider myself fairly lucky. I'm autistic, but I've also been able to outgrow a lot of my issues and be able to handle stress and work under pressure. This is a skill I've developed over time, over a long period of time, I should say. And it's why I've been able to hold on to a hospitality job. So sometimes the best way forward is by continuing to do something that you're not good at, and then it becomes easier. I'm good at dealing with it now because I have 10 years of experience. I know some of my co-workers watching this will be like, Saki, you can't handle stress. You're the most stressed out person I know. And they're partially right. There's an element of truth behind that. I can get stressed and irritated quite easily, but it's mostly a joke, and the intention is to put me at ease, because this is something that Australians generally do. Aussies commonly banter with each other in this way, especially in hospitality jobs, and I absolutely love it. In Australia, I would say it's quite deeply ingrained into our culture to make fun of each other, give each other crap, and we literally do this all the time. We don't take each other too seriously. We feel that it's an absolutely necessary part of life, because life is short and we want to enjoy it. This kind of mentality is different in some cultures. I think Japan is a little bit different. For example, if you joke around too much, someone might misinterpret your intention and mistake you for being offensive, when in fact you were just being playful. So in other cultures, you might want to be a bit more careful, as humor works a little bit differently. But there's always a layer that I think you can break through before you can start making fun of people. And in Australia, that layer is thin. All the joking that we do is in a good light, and we consider it a form of acceptance, which brings me back to my point of dealing with stress and anxiety. If you can accept yourself, others are going to accept you more easily. If you can make fun of yourself, that's going to invite people to also do the same to you without fear of you taking it the wrong way. And you'll also be able to make peace with your anxieties more easily. It's easy to get stuck into patterns of thinking that you're not good enough. I've definitely been down that road. It's not good. But if you accept yourself and you don't give a shit, it makes it a lot easier. By the way, none of this is professional advice. It's not meant to be professional advice, so please don't take it as that. I'm just saying what works for me personally and what works for a lot of other people, or what tends to work. Nothing that I say on this podcast is meant to be professional advice in any way. It's purely just for talking about various topics that are relatable to a lot of people, to help you learn English and such. And more than anything, I want this podcast to be a place where people can talk about their issues openly. Not just issues, but just any topic. It doesn't have to be about stress or anxiety or anything like that, but a space where you can talk openly about whatever you want without judgment. Now, I could probably honestly talk about anxiety for hours, but these videos are meant to be short, so I might just end the episode here. And with that said, I'd like to ask what you guys think. If let me know if anything resonated with you today, or if you found anything interesting. I'm open to suggestions for what topics you'd like me to cover in the future, and I wish you guys all the best in learning English, Aussie English, I should be specific. And I hope this podcast will continue to give you guys some insight into our culture. Thank you very much, guys. Thanks for listening, and see you next time.